so fucking gorgeous, bitch. I feel incredible. Okay? You cannot tell me nothing. Like, that's just what the fuck it... Okay, hold on. I need to do something really fast. Do I want to do under... You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. A little to, like, give it some dimension. Okay? Ooh, yes. Bitch, that's so cunty. Okay. You cannot tell me nothing. I like coconut water in theory, but I don't like the chunks. I don't like chunks in my water. I don't think that's a hot take. Maybe there are people who like chunks in their water. I am not that person. I don't want chunks in my water, please. Thank you. Okay. Let us get into it, bitch. Hello, sinners, and hail Sappho. It's your hostess with the mostest, Narcissa Deville, and welcome to Deville Worship. This is my podcast where I worship myself through affirmation, conversation, intention, and gratitude. And this week, I want to talk about something a little bit different, right? Okay. I guess you could say this is maybe more of a positive topic. Maybe you could say this is more of like an uplifting topic, but I kind of do want to have a conversation. And this one is specifically for the young people. Now, people my age and older, don't go anywhere because this is going to apply to you too. But first, I want to say something to the younger generation, okay? Because I recently heard, right, through the Vine, through the TikTok, whatever. Now, I admit that I don't look it, but I am kind of old. I am about to be 34 in just shy of a month, and I'm very, very proud of that. But I am what you would consider a millennial, and therefore, I think somewhat unrelatable at this point, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, but I want to talk to the younger people, and I'm specifically talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And the reason I want to have a conversation with you is because I just heard something, and I find it very upsetting, and it's not against you. It is not like reading you. It's just, I want to have an open dialogue. Okay. So I recently heard someone say that there is this idea amongst Gen Z and Gen Alpha, these younger generations, that earnestly going for your dreams, earnestly being seen as someone who has a dream that they want to achieve, is cringe, and therefore, like, you just don't want to do it. Like, I heard someone on TikTok kind of say that they were, like, a teacher, and they were told, like, you know, oh, I want to be a poet, but it's so cringe to, like, have a dream and want to achieve it and to go for it. And I personally just find that very tragic. And again, I am not blaming you for that. I am not at all trying to shame you. This is not like any of that sort of thing. This is not like a millennial coming for the younger generation for, you know, to attack you. No, this is, I want to have an actual conversation. Because if that's real, I think we need to discuss that. I think we need to discuss that. I think we need to discuss, because here's the thing, right? What it boils down to, first of all, I think this whole conversation about cringe is, it's, you're focusing too much about what other people think of you. And I get it. I think that is just something that we as humans kind of just do naturally. I don't think we intend to do it, but I think without meaning to, there is this thing where, because we are social creatures, we have a tendency to invest far too much concern in what other people think of us, right? You know, it's very much this thing, and especially now because of social media, there is very much this thing where the narrative really seems to be like, you know, you have to present a certain way. Your house has to look a certain way. That's why you see so many of these like huge Instagram, like celebrities and like TikTok celebrities who have like bare ass white walls with nothing to them. Their makeup is like, one color, looks like they didn't put on any makeup. And like, to me, look, if this is cringe, fine. I don't really care because I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me. Like, yeah, I'm fat. Yeah, I have a fake blonde hair. And what? Like, this is very much just what my aesthetic is. I look like this because I want to look like this. This is the image that I want to present to the world. And in a sense, it is me making a statement, right? Everything you do is you making a statement. I'm making the statement that, A, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me, but I'm also making the statement that at the end of the day, I'm the only one who gets to dictate what I look like, what I dress like, how I act, what my house looks like. I'm not going to let my life be dictated by an algorithm, right? And I think the thing about the whole cringe culture thing is it is so much of just like, it's letting society dictate your life for you. And again, so many generations before you have fallen for this. So many generations before. And even my generation is not innocent. You see all this trad wife shit. That is very much like millennial, but I think some Gen Z, because they are, getting to that age where they can get married, some of them. So like, yeah, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, we're all falling for this kind of bullshit right now. I do see that, and I do recognize that. And I'm calling them out too, don't you worry. But like, this is specifically a conversation about the idea of like, I don't want to be seen going for my dreams because that's cringe, right? And being an artist is somehow cringe. And I feel like personally, right, I am someone who has always just loved art, right? I've always just loved art. I think everyone to some extent loves art. I love writing. I have always fancied myself a writer. And I think part of the reason that a lot of times, and this isn't unique to young people, right? There is just something about being in your teens and 20s that I think there's just this weird thing inside of you that some of us, not everyone, some people get to that stage where they're just like, I don't want to be hurt. And so how I'm going to control that is I'm just going to be disaffected, right? There is this thing that you do. And I know because I've done it, right? I've been there, girl. You do this thing where you're trying to be disaffected from everything. You're like, I don't care, I've seen it, done it, whatever. It's that very like, nothing can touch me, nothing can affect me. When I was in high school, I was very much that like, ice queen bitch, like, whatever people say to me doesn't affect me. You are not going to see me sweat. You are not going to see me cry. And if you say, talk shit to me, I will talk shit worse and make you cry. I was that girl, because when you're especially a bigger girl and a queer girl, like, you have to be that girl. You have to be the girl who, if someone is going to bully you, you have to say, oh, okay, you want to come for me because of my weight or because of my glasses or because of whatever. Let me tell you about yourself. And that's really where, I think that's just what it is. It's, you have to survive. And especially as a teenager, you don't want to add to that. You've already got enough going on. So you feel like, okay, I don't have to, I was very much that girl, like, oh, love, that's not for me. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to go, there's just that thing, right, where you feel very like, I am just going to avoid pain by making myself this like hard bitch, this like ice queen that doesn't give a shit about anything, right? But the problem is, and what I have learned and what you will learn the hard way if you don't learn it now, is there is no avoiding pain. There is no avoiding rejection. There is no avoiding being hurt by something, because just the reality is, like, I know I think the idea of like not wanting anything or like all of that, it's easier said than done, but the reality is there's always going to be something that you want, whether or not you are willing to admit it. And no matter how hard you try and like push it out of your brain, like if it's something you want to do deep down, you're gonna have that like need, right? As someone who has been a writer my entire life, I could not write like for nothing. Like I have to. It's just in my soul. And if you are someone who knows that about yourself and feels that about yourself, like making art is something that's just deep down in your soul, writing, poetry, making music, all of these things, no matter how much you are afraid of rejection and you think, I'm not going to even try, I'm not going to even put myself out there, it's not worth it, you know, because only pain can come from that. That is not, it's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to avoid that. And maybe you don't think that it's, I'm trying to avoid pain. Maybe you just think, you know, I don't want to do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. It's not worth whatever. Maybe that is your truth. But I know from my experience as a person who, you know, has tried to avoid certain pain and certain rejection, it just does not work. It does not work because there is just an inevitability about it, right? You know, I have received rejection from my professional pursuits. The first one was when I was like 12. And then, you know, sporadically for the next like decade, let's say. And I have to tell you, not healthy to do that to yourself so young. Don't recommend, but it is something that's kind of unavoidable, right? And I talked about this in a different video, but like the rejections that I get now from jobs that I've applied to feel very reminiscent to the rejections that I was getting, you know, in my teens and early 20s from literary agents. And so like, even if you think you can avoid the rejection, even if you think you can avoid the pain of like putting something out there and it not being well received, because now you can kind of do it yourself. You don't need to find a publisher to put out, you know, a book. We've seen plenty of people on TikTok or YouTube who have, you know, managed to amass a following and can put out their own self-published book. You know, there was very recently a story that I heard about a young woman who is 22 and she put out a book and there was so much excitement and so much hype. And then, you know, people didn't feel like it was any good when it came out. And so now she's kind of been having to deal with that. And there's, you know, she's editing it and all of this other stuff. And I think stories like that definitely add to this feeling, right? They definitely add to the feeling of, oh, if I, you know, risk it, right? If I put out how, like my art, this is what I'm risking. I am risking embarrassment. I am risking, excuse me, I'm risking embarrassment. I am risking people laughing at me. I am risking people thinking that I'm ridiculous. I am risking, you know, rejection, essentially. That's what it boils down to. Even if you don't think that's what it is ultimately what it boils down to. You're afraid of getting rejected, being humiliated. And that is tough. Believe me, watching this, you know, I do see a lot of myself in this story. And, you know, I do see a lot of myself in this, like, fear of, you know, oh my gosh, this is your dream as a writer to have so many people so excited about your work. And then for them to get it and not like it and it feel like, oh, this is like a nightmare, right? That's your dream going to a nightmare, and that's terrifying, and nobody wants to experience that. And so I think there is kind of that fear of, what if I put myself out there and it doesn't work out? What if I put my art out there and people don't like it? You know, look, there's a lot of people putting their art out there. There's a lot of people putting their writing out there. There's people, you know, making shit up with ChatGPT and calling it a book and being like, well, I made an art. And it's like, no, not really, but okay. Sure, bud, whatever makes you, helps you sleep at night. Like, I don't, you're not going to stop them. People who want to make a quick buck want to make a quick buck and they don't give a shit about art anyway. The point is, it is very much this thing where you see those things and you see the market's so oversaturated. How am I ever going to get, myself in there? How am I ever going to get attention? Is this even worth trying? Is this even worth doing? What if I'm not good enough? And it's like, I think we need to, as a society, I think we really need to take a step back and say, you know what? Whatever else you can say about this whole situation, whatever else you can say, this is a person who, when you're going for your dreams, I think that means more than anything else, right? I think it means so much more to, really just want something so earnestly and fight for it and say, you know what? Yeah, it's risky. Yeah, I could embarrass myself. Yeah, I could be rejected and people could not like this. But I think earnestly just putting yourself out there and saying, you know what? Like, this is what it is. This is my truth. This is my story. This is what I want to do. I just think there is something so magical about that. And I think we need more of that. And like, I don't want to be this person, but I can't help but feel as though, like, the idea of cringe culture really, really, at the end of the day, is just another form of, like, fascist ideology trying to manipulate you, right? It's like, because we just need more whimsy, right? We just need people who are willing to be whimsical, who are willing to just do shit for fun. Part of what I've loved about fandom culture for the last, decade or so that I've been a part of it is that it's really meant to be fun. It's really meant, yeah, there's some good shit there. There is some really quality writing. But at the end of the day, it's meant to be fun. And I do feel as though some of the whimsy has been lost from fandom culture as it's gotten more visibility, as more people have gotten into fandom and it's become more mainstream. I do feel like something has been lost. And that's the same thing that's true of Drag Race too, right? Like, as something becomes more mainstream, for whatever reason, all of the fun and whimsy kind of gets lost from it, right? I remember to this day, whether it was good or not, I could not tell you, but I do remember, it is lodged into my brain that the very first fanfic I ever remember reading was a songfic to Hit Me Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. And I do, I don't believe in cringe, but I do remember reading it and I was like, oh, this is so weird, but I kind of loved it. And especially now, songfics don't really exist much anymore. I feel like songfics have kind of died, and that's really sad to me. Would I ever write one? No. Would I be inspired by music for a fic? Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who's not inspired by music as a writer, what are you even doing? But there's something about the songfic that I think, since that has kind of fallen out of favor, I just don't think fanfiction is the same. I don't think the whimsy of fanfiction is the same. And maybe part of it is the 50 Shades of Grey of it all, and people feel like, there's this potential now that you could file off the serial numbers and become a famous author for this fanfic that you published. And we've seen that lately. There's another big story that I've seen that's kind of gone viral through Book Talk and Threads about a fanfic author who famously wrote a redacted pairing that is now being made into a book, and they filed off the serial numbers. And there's a lot of contention about that because of the series that it comes from, because of the author, the original author that series comes from. And so I don't know, there's something about that series that has just inspired a lot of books already as it is that started out as fanfic. Like, I'm pretty sure there was another series that started off as fanfic that became like a big series. There was one book that everyone insisted was good that was like a dark academia, the Scholomance, oh god, I did not like that. But anyway, not the point. The point is, there is kind of this thing, right, where as fandom gets bigger, as it becomes more mainstream, I think there is kind of a thing where some of the cringier elements have just sort of fallen off, right? I think the elements that made fanfic really fun when I started writing it and when I started reading it have really become like, oh, that's cringy. Oh, we can't do that. You know, I don't really see, you can say whatever you want about me for this next sentence. I really haven't seen a lot of like ABO fic anymore. Like, Omegaverse fiction has kind of fallen off. And I know that straight people tried to take that, and no, girl, please don't. Like, find something else. Find anything else. But anyway, like, that's, like, to me, that's cringe. Straight people writing Omegaverse fiction, that's cringe to me, okay? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fucking 52 billionaire fanfics, novels that have come out that's like, romancing the billionaire. You've got one part of the population that's like eat the rich, and the other population part of the population that's like fuck the rich. And it's like, I mean, look, if you're going to take his money and then kill him, now that's a billionaire love story I would like to read. I want to read the story about the woman who like fleeces this rich man for all of his fucking money, murders him in his sleep, and then runs off with her lesbian lover. That is the story that I would pay to read, okay? Give me that story. Maybe I'll have to write that story. I don't know. But anyway, I'm all over the place. You know how this is. You guys know by now, if you follow me, like, I'm just all over the place. That's just what I do. And if that's cringy, I'm so sorry, but that's just who I am. But like, that's the thing, right? There is this obsession with the idea of like, I don't want to come off cringe. I don't want to come off like, whatever. Like, who cares? Everyone is cringy. Do you honestly believe, and like really, really think about it, and I think about this a lot, right? Because this is going to be a tangent, but bear with me, right? When I was in high school, when Gaga was first like coming up, I remember a lot of people who had like all this hate for Madonna because, oh, she's so old, she should just quit, blah, 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 blah. And she was like maybe in her 40s or 50s at that point. And I remember thinking, God, if she's lucky, Gaga is going to be in her 40s and still making music. And like, there's going to be people who are going to say the same shit. And you're going to be the one like, no, I want her to still make music. Like, I'm someone who's liked Madonna since I was like probably 10. So I just kind of feel like it's so strange to me to be like, how it goes back to the cringe thing, right, is there is this idea, a lot of people love to be like, oh, millennials are so cringe, wearing mom jeans, having a not middle part is so cringe, doing this is so cringe. And it's like, I hate to tell you this. Despite all the naysayers who say the world is going to end and that nobody in their 20s is going to live to be 40, I hate to tell you this. People have been predicting the end of the world since the beginning of the world. You are going to be fine. You are going to be in your 30s and 40s one day if you are very lucky. And what that means is you are going to be cringe to someone. That's just the circle of life. Getting older means eventually you are gonna become cringe to someone. I'm like, I don't want to come on here acting like everyone's fucking millennial mom who's bitching about the younger generation, because that's not what this is. This is not meant to shit on the younger generation. I'm just telling you, like, part of getting older is that you are going to be cringe to the next generation. That's just the circle of life. And it has nothing to do with anything you're doing. It's just part of it. You know what I mean? And so I think you have to get over that now, because if you don't, it's just going to hit you harder. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to stop giving a shit what people think sooner rather than later, because it's not going to get any easier. And again, this is coming from experience, right? This is coming from the experience of being someone who, you know, I had to, at a very young age, stop giving a shit what other people thought of me. You know what I mean? I had to really decide that what I thought of me was more important than what other people think of me. And that's not always easy. Believe me, that's not always easy. There's been plenty of times where I'm like, no, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't, you know, what are people going to think of me? Look, I wear fucking, you know, short shorts on the regular in the dead of winter. I mean, it's Texas, so we rarely get snow. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, unless I'm really fucking cold, I have been known to wear short shorts and a fucking faux fur coat. Like, if I'm really feeling it, that's what I'm going to wear. And it could be the dead of winter, and that's just what I'm going to wear. You know what I mean? Because I don't really have time to give a shit what other people think of me. I don't have time to give a shit whether or not you or you or you or you or you are going to be bothered by what I'm doing. I've worn this makeup to work. I've worn this makeup out and about. Like, this is, if I want to wear makeup, and I don't always, I do like to for videos, but I don't always like to wear makeup just in my day-to-day life, because sometimes I'm like, I don't have the energy to do it. I do, but I like to. I love this look. I would wear this anywhere. And if people are going to say shit, let them. You know what I mean? Like, I just think we really, 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 as a society, as a whole, because again, this doesn't just apply to the younger generation. This really applies to everyone. We all need to stop giving a shit what anyone thinks about us. You need to stop giving a shit what your parents think about you. You need to stop giving a shit what your friends think about you, what your enemies think about you, what Joe Schmo down the fucking street. People are way too concerned with, A, what other people are doing, but also what other people might think of you. That's what's the bizarre thing, right? Because on the one hand, most people out and about are too busy worried about themselves and worried about what other people think about them to really think about what you look like most of the time. But also, other people are concerned what other people are doing in other ways. It's really fucking strange. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But, like, that is its own fucking thing, right? You know, I think that's a conversation all by itself. But, you know, what I really wanted to say here, and really the importance of this conversation to me, and as far as I'm concerned, right, is I just want people to understand that no matter how much you think you're going to protect yourself from pain and from embarrassment and from being cringe and whatever, I think there is something more powerful in just putting yourself out there. Look, I've made 200 videos at this point, maybe more, since 2017. And a lot of them got, 5 fucking views. I did videos about art that a lot of people didn't really care about. Okay. I kept going. You keep going. You find something else. You try something else. You say, okay, I want to, I like doing this. I like making these videos. Yeah. People care more about shorts. Yeah, the content that I do for shorts gets kind of more views most of the time. Okay, I'm still going to make these podcasts because this is what I want to do. This is how I want to release my content right now. So, like, for me, I think it's more about saying, what do I want to do? If people don't like it, people don't like it. There is nothing that you can do about that. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I don't struggle, because there's been plenty of times where I have put something out, especially with writing, because that's the thing I think I'm most protective over, I guess. There's been plenty of times where there has been something I've written that it seemed like nobody cared and nobody read it and whatever. And I was like, let's take that back in. And that's... I need to work on that. I know I need to work on that because that is not how I want to do things, right? If people don't like what you write or don't like what you create, or you get rejected from publishers or literary agents or, contests that you enter, whatever it is that you're doing, I don't think that's a reason to stop. I think if anything, it's a reason to keep trying, because a lot of people have talked about this, and I do think there's something to this idea. The people who are truly successful, I know like the meritocracy thing is like kind of a lie, but the people who are truly successful are really just people who didn't give up. You know what I mean? I think there is something to be said about not giving up, right? I think really sticking with it, even when it's fucking hard. I mean, look, if anything, if there's any lesson to learn from someone like Ginger Minj winning her 4th time on All Stars, is like, clearly sometimes winning is just not giving up. She lost 3 other times and still came back. I think there is something to be said about just going for it and saying, you know what, fuck it. As long as I am trying, as long as I am working towards my goal, then that's what matters. You know what I mean? As long as I am fighting for what I love and doing what I enjoy, nothing else matters. If people don't like it, people don't like it. Like, you're not going to like every piece of art you see. I made this piece a while ago, and I personally love this. I love acrylic pour. Actually, I think it's acrylic blowout is probably what this would be, right? It's the idea of, mixing paint and water and, pouring it in a certain way and then using a blow dryer to just whoosh and create this whole effect. I fucking love this. I have so many pieces that I have made that have been around my house that are just so gorgeous and so much fun. And I wouldn't have known that I could do this unless I just fucking tried it. I got into recently, I'll have to put some pictures over here. I recently got into making art with oil pastels. Never knew that I could have so much fun and really love what I've made unless I just did it. And the point of that, and I haven't shared a lot of it just because I've been too lazy to scan it, because I kind of feel like taking pictures of things often doesn't do them justice. I found that out the hard way, is that a lot of times taking pictures of artwork does not do it justice and actually makes things look not as good as they really are. And that really pisses me off to no end. But I think, scanning things in and really taking the time to, post them that way, and I would love to show off my art more. And if people don't care or give a shit or whatever, that's fine. It's really for me. And that's another thing too, right? So much of what we do, and that's kind of, I'm kind of back and forth on it, right? Part of me wants to share my art because I think it's important to even share things that maybe are bad. And by the way, I think the conversation about good art versus bad art is so tired, and I think you just need to get over yourselves. It's so easy to be like, oh, this is good art, this is bad art. I think if you enjoy it and it makes you feel something and it makes you think something, that is what makes good art. And I guess this is the perfect time for me to talk about this. I've wanted to talk about this forever. So, okay, speaking of good art versus bad art, right? So there is this art. Okay, I have to reel myself up because I've been wanting to talk about this for a hot fucking minute, right? So there's this art piece that a lot of people a couple of years ago got really, really fucking mad at. And it is the art piece. I don't know what it's called, but it is a banana duct taped to a wall. And a lot of people got really, really fucking mad about this art piece. And I find that fascinating, right? And I'm kind of obsessed with this art piece now, and I'll tell you why. Now, mind you, I am someone who went to school for graphic design. We did do art history, so I'm not an art history major, but I do love art history, and I think I'm also a bitch who reads too much into shit, so I think I've given this a lot of thought over the last couple of years. And when I originally saw it, I was a little like, what the fuck is this? And I think especially the second part which I think, first of all, I think the whole thing is actually a really great piece of performance art. But I think the second part of it also pissed people off because someone bought the banana on the wall for like 20 million or 100 million, something crazy stupid, and then ate the banana. And that kind of pissed people off more. And I find that so hilarious. Okay, so let me get into it, right? So the banana on the wall, right? I think there's two parts to this art, right? There is the art itself and what it represents, and then there is the performance aspect, which is buying it and consuming it. Because the thing about art, right, is so much, especially nowadays, so much of art is really just for like very quick consumption, right? Bananas notoriously are like, bananas and like avocados are like a fruit that's like, you have to eat it now or it is going bad like yesterday. They are just fruits that really do not last for shit, right? So that's part of the art piece too, because there is something about art is very much for consumption. People kind of just want to, consume it, devour it, and that's kind of it. Like it's a very quick, thing. They see it, they like it maybe, and then they scroll, and that's it. That's kind of what I think a lot of art has become. And so on the one hand, the banana represents like, this thing that is like trapped on the wall and people kind of see it. They don't really engage in it. Maybe they have a reaction of anger. Maybe they have a reaction of like, what the fuck is this? But they kind of don't really, they interact with it very, very briefly, very, very statically. But it is something that is ultimately meant to be consumed. It is something that is meant to be seen and appreciated, right? And then you have the second part, which is the performance art aspect, which I think goes hand in hand. And that is the part where the person who purchased it and then ate it. Because what does that mean? What does that symbolize when you really, really get down to it, right? They are literally consuming this art that otherwise would have just sat there and rotted, would have otherwise been unappreciated, it just would have sat there and it would have decayed, right? Because that's also a representation too, is like the nature of decay and the nature of art, and that no matter how, interesting or beautiful we find art, it ultimately can't last forever. There has been a lot of efforts to preserve a lot of art from like the Renaissance era, but ultimately like art isn't going to last forever. The paint is going to fade and decay. Like just, you can't protect this stuff forever, right? But in a way, consuming the banana, consuming the art piece, it is now a part of you, right? It is now very literally nourishing you, nourishing your soul, because you have consumed this art and you have taken this art into you and it is now a part of you. And so the literal act of eating the banana that, yes, you paid a lot for, and that could be its own conversation about consumerism and the nature of like the expensiveness, that because someone said this is art, that now, and that a lot of people agreed that it's art, now this piece that otherwise would have been, $1.99 is now millions of dollars, and that's its own conversation. But it's also like this conversation about, consuming art and taking the art into you and it nourishing you and your soul and making you, you're making it a part of yourself, right? Because bananas are very high in nutrients. They are considered to be, something that's very good for, I don't know, I fucking hate bananas, but I think they're good for potassium, which is something we very much need in our bodies, right? Bananas are kind of just important in that way, and fruits are important in that way. And it really wouldn't have mattered, I think, what the food was. It's more a statement of, this is a piece of art. It is perishable art. It is ultimately going to decay, like all of us will, but it lives on in the consumption of it. It lives on in you viewing it and being changed by it and taking it into yourself and forever being altered by it, because your body has been improved and nourished by this thing that you've consumed. And art is something that ultimately does nourish your body. It nourishes your soul to witness art and to take it in. And a lot of times, if you see something that moves you and speaks to you, that is something that will live with you. And you can then in turn create your own art because you have seen this art, because you have consumed this art and taken it into yourself and brought it into yourself. And it is something that is now a part of you that you can also share with the world. And that is why I think the idea of good art versus bad art is kind of, I think it's very basic. I think it is an argument that is very one-dimensional. It's an argument that is very, very much dependent on the viewer, right? Because if it makes you feel something, even if that something is anger, then that is interesting art. And interesting art to me is better than good art, right? Because what is good art anyway? You know, obviously a lot of people think all of the Renaissance art is good art. Oh, it's very European art, and that is what we have mostly seen as good art, right? Very European, very American art that is very, you know, from a certain part of the country that we get to see, but we rarely get to see and appreciate art from other countries and other cultures, and that is often not seen and appreciated as good art or even, you know, high art or whatever. You know, I just think there has to be a thing where we decide that the difference between good art and bad art is not only subjective, it's very much dependent on, you know, whether or not it makes you feel something, whether or not it makes you think, whether or not there is something deeper there for you. You know what I mean? Because if you are just looking at art and you feel nothing, you're just like, okay, yeah, that's a thing. Like, that doesn't mean anything. To me, some of the most beautiful art that I have seen that has touched my soul and really made me feel something and made me happy to have seen it is like fan art, man. You know, actually, some of the most amazing things that I've seen, and art that, like, you know, is it high quality? Maybe not. But when people have made fan art of my fic and like things that I've written, even if it is not technically, you know, Renaissance worthy or whatever, it's beautiful because someone thought enough about my work and wanted to create something based off my work. And that is what I think is so meaningful. And that to me is great art because it made me feel something. It made me have a reaction. And even if it's anger, even if it's frustration, even if it's confusion, I think having a reaction to art is what makes it, if not good art, interesting art. And maybe we need to stop looking at art as inherently good or bad and just, is it interesting? You know what I mean? I think we get so bogged down with this idea of like, what is good art? What is bad art? What is, you know, good writing or good poetry or bad poetry? Does it make you think and feel? Does it cause a reaction in you? Does it make you question the world? That is what I think makes good art, quality art, good writing, good poetry, all of it. Does it make you reevaluate things? Does it make you say, I never thought about things that way? Maybe that's something to consider. I'm just saying, I just think we really get bogged down with, you know, good versus bad, you know, quality versus whatever. Like, I just think we need to stop and think about whether or not things are just interesting and whether or not they make you feel something and make you think something. And that might be more interesting than saying if art is good or art is bad. To me, to me. I know there's going to be people who are going to still defend the idea that good art is good art, and, you know, it means that you practiced and put in a lot of effort. And I don't disagree that good art takes time, and good art takes practice, and good art takes effort, and all of that. I don't disagree that for the most part that's true, and, you know, taking the technical time. But I also think, should that be the main focus? You know, like, you're not going to get a grade in art. You know what I mean? So, like, this idea of, is it good? Is it bad? Well, you can't get a bad grade in art. I mean, you can if you are going to art school. I should know. But, like, for the most part, you're not going to get a bad grade in art if people don't think it's good quality or don't think it's, you know, whatever. Like, it's just your opinion, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If it makes you feel something and you wanted to create that art, create that art. And that's really what this comes down to. Whether or not the art that you create is good or bad, whether or not it is going to be rejected or seen as cringe or whatever, what matters is what it makes you feel. What matters is that it's something that you wanted to do and you wanted to create. And I've said this before, and I'll say this again. I understand that there is a desire to make things that are ultimately going to be able to sell, right? You want to make something that you can make money off of because you don't want to have to work for some asshole for 8 hours a day. I get that so hard. I have wanted nothing more than to be successful on YouTube and TikTok and Patreon and with my writing, because I don't want to have to work a day job anymore, because I don't want to have to work for somebody else anymore. Like, please understand, I'm not up here doing all this shit because I don't want to be successful. I'm not up here doing all this because I don't want people to watch it and like it and share it and comment and subscribe and all these other things. Like, obviously, I am here in part because I do like attention and I do want people to appreciate what I put out. So, like, don't get it twisted. But I also know that some things just aren't going to resonate, and maybe they'll resonate later. Maybe they won't. You know, I just can't know. But I do know I have to keep trying, because that's the only way to succeed. And that's the only way to make yourself happy, is that you keep trying and you keep putting yourself out there. And, you know, there is no way to skip rejection. There is no way you can avoid it. And what you're going to end up doing is realizing in your late 20s that you have really tried your hardest to push away all of this negative feeling. You've tried to push away getting rejected, and it still didn't work. And now you have to undo all of this. You have to take down all of these walls because they don't serve you. Having all of these walls, having all of this fear, having all of this, like, oh my gosh, I don't, you know, like, it's too much. I don't want to get rejected. I don't want to be cringe. I don't want people to witness me, whatever. Like, that is not going to serve you in the long run. You have to, unfortunately, if you want to make friends, you have to be seen. If you want to have a relationship, you have to be seen. You cannot have the walls up forever. You cannot avoid rejection forever. You are going to eventually have to do it. And so why not do it now rather than later? Because it's not going to get any easier. Believe me, I have spent years and years and years since I was 28, 29, trying to undo the walls that I spent years in my teenage years putting up. And sometimes it's easier than others, but it's work. It's work. And that's just what it is. So yeah, I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. I think I've kind of made all of the points that I wanted to make in this. I just really encourage people to, you know, young people as well as people my age. And the thing that I want to say to people my age is, like, I'm going to encourage you to have a little more compassion with yourself, but also with younger people. Remember what it was like to be young. Remember what it was like to feel that nobody sees you or understands you or gets it or whatever. And I think just have a little more compassion for everyone. I think we all need to have a little more compassion for each other. And I think working hard to recognize that at the end of the day, achieving your dreams and going for your dreams and fighting for what you want is never going to be easy. It is never going to be glamorous behind the scenes. Whatever you see on TikTok and Instagram, sure, that's going to be glamorous, but that's not really reality. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be scary, but it is worth it. And that is the message I want to leave you with. It is so worth it to go for what it is you want, not even whether or not, you may be successful, you may not be successful. It is worth it because you will know that you tried and you gave it your all and you fought with everything you had for something. That's what matters at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, I know we always say like, oh, things are bad, things are hard, there's real things going on. Why should this thing matter? We need people to fight for what they want. We need people to fight for their dreams and to do what it is that makes them happy, because I do think, the idea of cringe and conformity is an arm of fascism, right? It is one of the many tentacles of fascism, if you will. There is this idea that, if you conform, if you don't make waves, if you don't, if you just stay in line and you don't do anything that's like, outside of the norm, and you just kind of keep your head down, that will protect you and that will keep you safe. And it won't. It won't keep you safe, and it won't make you happy. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, maybe you're cringe, but guess what? If you're happy, that's what matters. You can be cringe as long as you're happy. You know what I mean? It doesn't hurt anyone to be cringe. It doesn't hurt you or anyone else for you to be cringe. And if you want to be cringe in public, be cringe in public. Be cringe for cringe sakes. Who fucking cares, man? Life is too short, okay? And that's the reality of the situation. Life is both too short and too long to give a shit what anyone else thinks of you. Okay? I was gonna say, gratitude. Okay. I am grateful for anyone who fights against the cringe. I am grateful for anyone who fights against conformity and just wears what they want and does what they like and dresses, in the makeup they like, and doesn't let fucking, Architectural Digest determine what their house should look like. Because every time I see a fucking article that's like, 5 trends that are out in apartments that designers say will make your apartment look bleh, I'm like, I don't fucking care. I don't need to know what your opinion is, actually. I'm going to paint my house the color that I want to paint my house. I am going to decorate it the way I fucking want to. And that's just going to be what it is. Like, nobody is going to determine that for me. You know what I mean? But I am grateful for people who are seeing the light and do recognize that cringe is just... It's so tired. It's so fucking tired. Find something new. Like, if you're afraid of being cringe, that's fine. But like, you're going to regret living your life for other people. That's just what it is. I saw this story that really made me happy about like a woman who, was like kind of a Karen who got divorced in like her 60s and then just became this like total fucking goth biker chick and really got to live her best life. And I just think that's so fucking cool. Like, I just think you need to live your life, because there's so many people who want to dictate to you and tell you who you are and tell you, what you should be or what you should do or what you should want. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to do me and I'm going to have fun and I'm going to love it, because otherwise you're going to wake up one day and be like, fuck, I lived my life for everyone else and not myself. And now I'm not happy. And there's always time to change it. It's never too late. But like, I just think that's something to keep in mind. And then as far as my affirmations, I'm going to affirm to myself that I am going to really work harder as a writer to not let what other people potentially think of my work or don't think of my work, or if they care or not, to have any effect on whether or not I put something out there and, risk the, risk the possibility of being cringe or no one giving a shit. Because the point is just to do it. You know what I mean? Just to put it out there and say, this is me. This is what I'm writing. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay. Like, this is for me at the end of the day. I love doing this and I'm going to keep doing it. And like, why not just share it and put shit out there and just keep trying? And that's what I'm going to affirm to myself. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Obviously, you know what to do. Comment down below, share this video, like this video, subscribe both to this channel and my podcast on Apple Music. Don't fucking use Spotify. Oh, sorry, Apple Podcast. Don't fucking use Spotify. But yeah, thank you so much. And until next time, stay devilish and see you next Tuesday. Whee! Ow. Why did I do that? Whee! I don't even know. God, that hurts. Ugh. That's how you know you're getting old. Ugh. Okay. Ugh. Why did I become fucking Joan Rivers? Ugh.